I am making a Hades-inspired roguelike where you select one out of 4 playable wizards and go on a journey to defeat waves of enemies in different stages, gaining and evolving spells, and by doing so, creating crazy combos and builds. In case you missed it, in the last devlog I covered the new stage designs and also how I fixed a major lag issue that my game was having. As you can see, it's been a long while since I gave you guys an update, so prepare for some massive changes to the game. That being said, I want to get you straight into the new stuff, but before I do that, let me tell you a little story. You know how when you're making a game, you want to start off by playing some reference titles, so that you know what makes these types of experiences, good. Well, I did do that, but I happened to miss some key titles such as Enter the Gungeon. So, a couple of weeks ago, I gave it a try and was shocked by how similar my game was to theirs. I mean, they're both roguelikes, have multiple characters, range combat, pixel art, abilities, basically the same game. And when you're a good game developer, you want to have your own unique experience. You don't want to have games that are like way too similar to other games. And not me though, not me. I kept on stealing. Oh, what's that? Gungeon has reloading? Oh, you mean we? We have reloading. Oh, those are some cool basic enemies with interesting shooting patterns. Our basic enemies with interesting shooting pattern. But seriously though, that reloading mechanic was very much needed for my game. I couldn't find another way to prevent my players from mainly relying on the basic attack, so I tweaked their behavior a bit and added a clip size to each one of them. Now, for example, the fire character has this quick burst ability with high damage, but since he only has one shot in his clip, he has to rely on dodging while waiting for it to charge back, essentially creating this ebb and flow during combat. Of course, every character has a different reload speed and a clip size to balance out how impactful a single shot from their basic attack is. On the flip side, the new enemies also fit perfectly in the current roster. I wanted them to represent the 4 elements that I already had in the game, so I went ahead and drew them in the style of each playable character. For example, the water character in my game is essentially made out of water, and I decided to make the water enemy wizards a fish. Bruh. Their attack also represents the one that their opposites have, but with a slight twist. See, for example, the water enemy wizard has a projectile that, upon impact with a wall, explodes into other projectiles, similar to the water character's burst, that explodes dealing AoE damage when it hits an enemy or a wall. Overall, I'm super happy with these enemies, they add so much more chaos to the battlefield and I'm all up for it. Next up, let's move on to the biggest change of these past few months: the ability upgrades and evolutions. Previously, upon leveling up a spell, you would only receive a damage increase for it, which isn't much of an upgrade and doesn't give you that sense of growth that I was aiming for. I always wanted to make each ability upgrade feel very meaningful and impactful, so I logically sat down and designed 4 iterations of each ability, which is 20 by the way, making it a total of 80 ability iterations. This is exactly what the bad weather in the Netherlands does to me, man. And trust me when I say, this took me so long. From designing, to implementation, then balancing all the spells. It felt like eternity, but I can finally say that I'm happy with how the progression feels in the game. Now, for example, when you first get a fire laser, it's going to be this little tiny small laser that fires once, with okay damage. Then, when you upgrade it, it fires twice, dealing a bit more damage each shot. So on and so forth until you reach the final upgrades that I call evolution. When you evolve a spell, that ability gets transformed and becomes a way more powerful version of itself. In this case, you get 3 long lasers that deal a significant amount of damage at fast rate and also low cooldown. The next step would be to improve all their art and make it change based on the ability level. So lower level spells will have more simple and light colors, while the evolved ones will be more apparent and detailed. Alright, that's enough for the spells. Now let's go into some quality of life changes that I also got to do in the past few months. To start off, I finally got to iterate on the elemental combinations. In case you aren't familiar with what they are, don't panic. I'm gonna explain in 3, 2, 1. In my game, every time you hit an enemy with a spell, that enemy is marked with the spell's element. The moment you hit it with another spell that has a corresponding element, you will proc the ability combinations. For example, if you combine fire with wind, you get a bouncing flame that jumps from an enemy to the closest one nearby, dealing damage. Another would be the earth plus water one, that creates a small vortex pool, dragging nearby enemies together. These small bonuses can be really useful during combat if you get to proc them as often as possible, so I decided to add a counter to them and make it give points at the end of a run. Hopefully, this way my players will try to make builds around them and use them as much as they can. Next up, I redid the ability select widgets, adding new text and showing in different colors what parts of that spell are being upgraded. I plan on redoing the visual design for this UI later on, making it look like a book that has pages for each spell, similar to Wizards of Legend. Talking about ability selects, I also redid my system for the rewards. So now the rewards you get will adapt to what build you're making. Say you have acquired only fire and water spells, well, this means that from now on you will only be receiving fire and water spell rewards. Later on, when you have maxed out, for example, all of your fire spells, the game will replace those rewards with XP capsules that will help you grow faster in stats. These changes improve the game's flow significantly, making the experience tailored towards your current run. Since the player can't change their kit, receiving a reward for a spell that you can't equip is absolutely pointless, so the system was very much needed. Talking about flow, I also changed how you progress stages. I wanted to make that part of the game smoother and to avoid forcing the player to look for the exit door and their rewards. Now, once you kill the last enemy, the reward will spawn somewhere around you, and once you acquire one of them, you get sucked into a teleporter and placed in the next stage. There is of course no teleport visual right now, but you can imagine that there is one. When it comes to the stage structure, I also introduced a new type of environmental obstacle, the pit. You can't enter or fall in it, but you can shoot through it, making it a great way for me to limit some spaces while not offering full cover for the player from most enemy attacks. And with that being said, these are all the changes since the last devlog. As you can see, yet again the art part is lacking, as I'm really slow when it comes to it. I am more and more leaning towards the idea of looking for a pixel artist that can take care of that part of the game, but for now I plan on spending a few weeks just on art to try and get it right. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you in the next one.